First, I'd like to go through a round of introductions amongst the panelists, so they tell you in general terms what initiatives they represent and what type of courses they deliver. Starting with Liz.
Hello, thanks Agnieszka. So I'm Liz Rosenthal. I run a company called Power to the Pixel. So Power to the Pixel helps media and film professionals create stories and find finance for those projects that can engage audiences across the multiple platforms and spaces they now engage. And we run two main programs among other activities. The first one I'm going to talk about on this panel is the Pixel Lab, which is our main annual development program. And the second one is Power to the Pixel, the Cross Media Forum, which happens in October in association with the BFI London Film Festival, which has the largest sort of dedicated market for innovative media projects. It's also a conference and a think tank.
So at the lab, you recruit whom, you do what type of projects, you train in?
It's a project-focused lab. So we're very strategic about how you approach ideas development. And we take 16 producers who have the rights, who own the project, and we take 16 other media professionals on the lab, so it's 32 participants altogether, who can come from any part of the development or creative or finance or distribution cycle of intellectual property. And the idea is we work very collaboratively. We have a methodology that we've worked on now since 2010, that we've really tried and tested with really some of the most excellent practitioners who work on ideas that combine story, different platforms and technology. And we have a very special way of working that's a mixture of group and collaborative work, one-to-one sessions, presentations. But if you come with a project, you also get to go to our London event. That's the second part of the workshop, and present your project in business meetings. So you're looking at potential financiers and collaborators. So it's a very extensive course with a lot involved in it.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Stephan, you traveled from Paris to us. Tell us about Screen for All, please.
Thank you. I apologize because, one, I'm French, and the second, I got a cold, so I hope you are going to understand what I like to explain to you. So I run a company named Avance Rapide, so I mean fast forward in English, and since a long time we do some consultancy on new technology and also training. And since 6 years, we have some training with media program and now Europe Creative. This year, it's a new course named Screen for All Campus, and the title is like a Russian movie title. So it's new funding sources and disruptive use and technology for TV, film, and new screen. So the idea is to democratize technology, and during this training we are going to talk a lot about 4K ultra high definition, because we think it's a good opportunity now to sell some contents. Lots of new platforms like Amazon, Netflix, Hulu, and tomorrow, I think, Apple. They need some 4K content. Producing 4K is not so expensive. I think it's the same cost as 5 years ago in high definition. The tools are more easy to use. So we have really focus on that, and also we are going to talk about this new platform, about digital marketing. The idea is to give you like a toolbox or like a Swiss Army knife with lots of tools to be aware of what you have to do when you are in front of a guy from telco. For example, in France, Orange is one of the leaders, and they need this kind of content, multi-screen content or linear content. So we are going to give you the language, the tips and tricks, I would say, and also, like it was mentioned before, how to engage your audience. I said several times this morning this anecdote, but one of friend of mine is a movie director, and he was challenging with another director for making an ad for TV. He's a great guy with a very nice demo reel, but he had less followers on Twitter than the other guy, and the producer chose the other guy. So there's a new matrix in this world, is followers or fan, and we also in this training are going to explain how to grow up your audience like that.
Thank you very much. And over to Nathalie.
Hello everyone, I'm Nathalie Goethals. I'm from Belgium. And I'm representing FLab, so Interactive Factual Lab. I'm from the company iDrops, Innovative Drops. So what is FLab? It's first year that we're running this training initiative. It's 3 times 4 days. It's 3 times 4 days residential. It's in 3 different countries. This year is in Belgium. It's in Sweden. It was in Sweden, and it's in London now in November. And it has a focus on storytelling. It has a focus on design, and it has a focus on coding. Why? The reason why we created this workshop is because we strongly believe that there should be more focus on UX, on user experience. That is very important from the beginning onwards to think about who's the user, and everything should be in your interactive documentary or interactive reportage of interactive installation should be with a focus like for who I'm doing this, and everything should be designed in that direction. We also strongly believe in the power of design thinking, where you create your prototype, and with a prototype it's much easier to see which directions to go. It's also easy to see where your failure is and to build on your weaknesses and make them stronger. And another very important fact is also the new way of working together, the new way of collaborating together, because with interactive it's pretty new, isn't it? You know, you're a storyteller, but then what? You have to design think, you have to design. What? No, you don't have to design. You work with a designer, but how do you work with a designer? How do you work with a coder? So that's like another part that for us is very important, how you have that new kind of teams made and to make this possible. So that's a little bit what we are and what we do.
Lovely, thank you very much. I thought that first we might look at the aspect of storytelling, really, because that is what the new digital technologies now allow us to tell stories in a new way that was not possible before. In the analog world, it was quite simple, straightforward. You had either, feature film for cinema or documentary for broadcast. It was all rather straightforward. Now, with the multitude of platforms, distribution platforms, and the new ways of telling stories, the possibilities might be even daunting for producers. And I think that you guys, your mission is to make that transition simpler. So somebody who knows that, yes, I do have this amazing story, maybe it's real world story, so documentary story or a fictitious story, but it no longer has to be limited to 90 minutes on big screen or 60 minutes on small screen. And you will help them take that core of the story and unleash it to all those different opportunities. Who wants to go first?
So I think when we set up Power to the Pixel, it was in 2007. Wow. Things have changed so much. And that's what's kind of important when you think about it. YouTube was barely in existence then. Exactly. What we found is when people started applying for our lab and market, they'd apply with these kind of like checkbox of cross-media possibilities. What we're really trying to do in the lab and all of our work is get people to think very carefully about what they're actually trying to communicate, who they're communicating to, before you start thinking how you're going to engage them and design the product that you're going to make. Now, as I come from independent film world originally, I was involved in production and finance and sales of films. And what I was used to, I found, which is we have to sort of very much adapt the way we work and how we develop ideas, is that you're developing for a platform, for a distribution format, let's say a feature film that's 90 minutes, and you spend a long time developing that idea in a vacuum. in a kind of business-to-business vacuum for many years. If you're lucky, it's 5 years between concept to point of sale, let's say the exhibition. And you never involve people. You never try out ideas. You're never trying to grow. People hate the word brand, but let's use the word brand because we're growing an idea and an identity, whether it's a documentary project or it's a fiction project. You're trying to grow an idea and check whether this idea has potential, it has traction, whether this idea of prototyping that Nathalie was talking about is really important. What does that mean? The idea that maybe you can build a kind of like, an audience, or you can build traction for an idea earlier on without giving a whole thing away, but you can sort of start a brand, or you can develop an element of it with an audience, have data about that audience, and then use what you know to build value or to show investors that your idea has value. Instead of working in that vacuum for ages and hoping right at the end someone's going to, at a market, is going to buy your project and hopefully it's going to get out into the world and not after the first weekend come off the cinema if you're lucky enough for that to happen. So it's about trying to grow something intelligently, thinking that things have changed really a lot. Audiences aren't doing or aren't engaging with ideas in the same way. And that's the idea, is we're trying to get producers and other creators to think very carefully what is the core of what you're trying to say. Who are you talking to? Look at their behaviours and motivations, really study that. And then think about where you're going to engage them first. And it's not necessarily about high tech. It's not about the fact that you've got to use different platforms to tell your story. It's about which one to use. And that's what we're interested in. It's about growing something strategically and organically. Whereas I think a lot of the time when transmedia or cross-media is talked about, it's about this idea of checkbox, that you can do this for the sake of it. But I think before you set out, because it's quite hard, we're at a very early stage, you're learning new skills, like Nathalie said, about working between designers and technologists and storytellers. You have to build these new relationships. It's very hard to finance a project because financing innovation is always difficult. So before you go ahead, you really need to make sure you're making the right choice.
Yeah.
So that's what we try and help do with producers.
Exactly. And Stephan, for you, it's about recognizing that now we're making content not for one screen, but for the whole multitude of screens, and that might affect how we shape those projects. Is that something you help people figure out?
Yes, we try. We don't use the term cross-media or transmedia, but more omni-screen or multi-screen, but it's the same roots, I will say. But what is important is to know where do you want to go. It's not after; it's during you write your project. And at the end of the training, we have one day, or it will be like a pitch with several people who are going to study the project of our trainees, and to give them advice to finalize their project, either a project, or if they don't have a project at this time, it will be on an exercise. Because you don't have the same language when you are going to try to sell your project to a regular broadcast channel, or to a platform of VOD, or OTT, or this new player we are very growing quickly and rapidly on the market. So yes, it's important to have an idea before to launch the project. Yeah.
And it's quite hands-on, no? You have workshops and
yes,
where you analyze. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. We during this session we will have some practice and hands-on on two parts. The first it's on 4K because we thought 4K it's now very mature, cheaper, and it's not only more resolution. I think it's also not pixel to the power, but power to the pixel. This new pixel, perfect. For 4K, it's more colorful, better quality, and it's like when you launch a rocket, you have a small window to launch a rocket, and now it's a time to launch this 4K rocket, because there's some channels. We have some study who said that in 5 years we will have around 50 channels in the world in 4K UHD. The first channel will be launched here in UK. It's BT, who launch sports and movie channel. But in France, Canal Plus is launching a channel. Arte is also doing some tests in 4K. So, and Korean, they are looking very, very aggressively some content. So they are, for them it's crucial. So they have some project to co-produce with some producer in Europe to have some content. And the idea during the training is to see the products, what is going to fit with your project for documentary, for independent movie. It's one part, and also we do some practical training on how to have an overview about all the platforms available in Europe and in other parts of the world. So yes, we try. Mojo, I would say it's be disruptive, but be financial, be connected, and be technologic. If you have these three stones, I think you start to build a wall, a strong wall.
Exactly.
Foundation.
Exactly. And with FLab, Nathalie, is it a kind of new take on traditional documentary, or is it more than that? In terms of storytelling, what type of projects are you?
The type of projects are a bit diverse. So, okay, the main focus is interactive documentary. So we say it's interactive factual with interactive documentary, but as well for journalists, to make reportage, as well like museums or NGOs for installations to shoot whatever. Where you need like different platforms. But the thing is, what I wanted to tell you is how we try to see this is with the triggers and anchors. That's how we have a look at the storytelling. Because, for example, you can make a documentary or a reportage about prisons in Peru, but it can be like different levels in the storyline. And that's what we want to, in the beginning, that's very important for us to really find out what's really deep inside there and try to connect that with the different users or different target groups. And that's something within the first workshop, which is focused on storytelling, that we really try to discover, like, okay, is it about interaction, about human interaction? Is it about hierarchy? Is it about South America? What are like the different perspectives that you look at it? So that's for us storytelling, but seeing it from a different angle, and then trying to connect that with platform or which ways that you best relate to your audience, best relate to your user, what he, she really wants. So that's the way how we approach that.
Yeah, because the audience, the user is more in control of what and how they consume or view this new breed of projects. And we need to think about it in creation, that it's
from the start, from the beginning onwards,
exactly.
And not at the end, like we have to market something and how will we do the marketing and how to find. No, it's from the beginning onwards, and that's also how you create your design. Like in IT, how you create your design, like you have behavior design. How will you make design that changes behavior? How will you create a call to action to a user? So these are all different things that are very important, not only for us, but I think, but I think in general, whatever that you do. So yeah, whatever project you make.
So it's about this kind of shift of thinking that your starting point is not, oh, I've got this documentary to do then with an idea attached to it, but it's the other way around, really. I've got this idea, and then it could end up being on television as a passive watching documentary, but it could also be interactive experience. It could be watched on 2 screens or 3 screens at the same time, and using social networks to engage with other members of the audience. It's about, when you say brand, Liz, it's that's this core idea, is that brand where you take it then to all those different channels. Is that?
It could be, yes.
Yeah.
And I think that Well, I still don't think. I think you could still have a goal, which is to make a film.
Okay.
But how do you get there as well?
Yeah.
Maybe a different route. And that's the thing, I think you have to really think carefully about what your goal is. Before, the goal was always to make the film, the documentary film that you mentioned.
Yeah.
And there's a certain established way that's now been totally disrupted now, or it's being disrupted at the moment. I think it's been disrupted. So you have to think of what you have to do, like you were mentioning how you have to come with a different investment package in a way which is kind of like an idea of who the user or audience is, what they do, how, you have to have data about your audience in a very wide sense. And that's not necessarily sort of something that's complex that you can't afford to do. You have to know how to do that. So you'll go maybe about you want to make something that is quite an expensive media product to develop, which is feature film. But you may have to make other things on the way to get there and develop other products. When I talk about brand building, we may never get to that film. You may discover, for example, in our lab, often we've had projects where people have had a goal of something that's huge, and there'll be many different products, and they maybe go in a different direction, because once you've sort of broken it down and thought about who your audience is, where you want to make impact or where you want to engage people, there are actually better distribution formats than a film to do that. For example, I was recently on the jury for a human rights festival, and what I really realised was most of those filmmakers want to create change of some sort, and often making a film, that's kind of their goal, is not the easiest way to do that. So it's like making those kind of choices. What's your goal? What are you trying to say? And is this the best place to do it? Or do I want to be a filmmaker? Which is a different thing, which is fine, but it's just you have to... Those are the questions now,
What the real goal is.
So does that answer?
No, absolutely. And I think that if you like what you're hearing now, that you have to open your mind a little bit wider, then very soon you will stumble upon the technological aspect of it. Like, yes, I'd love to, but what's the know-how? How can I actually understand better how to get there? And that's something that you started talking about. People can actually have a go with those 4K cameras when they come to your course, can't they? Can you tell us a bit more about it? And then we'll hear about software solutions that people can learn about. Because it is a little bit ahead of the curve. People are not yet quite working in 4K.
No.
So that's great that you can be there with avant-garde of users.
It's beginning, but the manufacturer now, I think we count yesterday, there's about 30 different models on the market of 4K camera, 40. So it's important, but with several prices. It's begin at 500 euros to 20,000 euros. So what I have to choose for my project. Also, cameras are good. It depends on the project, and.
But it's affordable.
It's affordable, yeah. It's affordable.
You seriously start thinking
about. You could buy
about
one. You could rent one. It depends. With our activity, we are very involved in this broadcast on cinema market in France. So we have some nice relationship with the manufacturer with the rental company. So all this camera will be present during the training, and all the training could test, make some picture, see on the big screen, color grade the picture. So it's unique to that. It's just not a show where you see a camera, oh, she's nice, big, but here you could really test it with a DOP and a guy who manage all this data. So it's one part. It's important for us and for our trainees and trainers. You have another question?
No, that's what it was. That it's very hands-on. That if you go and get trained, you will get trained in practical way.
And I'm not a 4K maniac, but because it's a new, it will be the new revolution. Not really a revolution. It's an evolution, but it's really important to be.
And the advantage is that it lends itself better to this multi-screen use, and when you
better is your medium at the beginning. Better it will be at the end. So
exactly.
To be on a small screen or an iPad or over products. There's some compression, so you are going to to lose a part of the quality. So better at the beginning, better it will be at the end.
Exactly, exactly. And Nathalie, coding in filmmaking.
Coding and filmmaking.
Using software for what? What can we learn from FLab?
What can you learn from FLab? What can you learn about design? What can you learn about coding? So what we did in the design lab, for example, do you all need to be designers? No, you don't. But how we worked with wireframe prototyping, so that you learn to see wireframe per wireframe, that you work out how your film or how your product, how your project is looking like. So do you really need to be like a real designer? No, but it gives you like some how do you say, some feeling what it is, and it gives you some support in that. About the coding, do you need to be a coder? No, you don't have to be a coder. You work in a team with a designer and a coder, but you need to learn some basics, and you need to learn the language a little bit and the basics. Like, for example, you have different interactive documentary or interactive project platforms, like you have Clint, and that's one that we're going to work with now in the third workshop that's taking place in November. And you have other ones, like you have Siga. Siga comes from the States. So you have different kind of those, but we're going to work with Clint. Clint is a platform where you're making your interactive documentary, where you can fill in all the different kinds of material that needs to be there. I'm not, let's say, an expert myself in this. My colleague Sandra is much better in this than I am. But I would say, like, check it out in November, how it works. So.
Very good, very good. And finally, when we think about new types of projects, new types of technology, surely there's new types of funding for them as well, where people, again, might initially, when we come from a more analog world, let's call it that way, we might not be aware of those new sources of funding that go with this whole new area. Can you train in that? Can you tell people about those new funding sources?
Well, at Powder Pixel, we've made a really big point of making connections with whole networks of commissioners and investors across the different media industries. And as I was saying before, you know, when you start financing innovation, it's always a sort of high-risk thing to put money into. So over the 9 years we've been running, obviously we built up a big connection with television channels, soft funders from around the world, publishers, advertisers, R&D technology funds, private financiers. And we find it really interesting bringing these people together because they're often stuck in their media industry silos, which is very much the case still today. People operating as still their way the television industry works, the film industry works, the publishing industry, the games industry. But we're trying to sort of morph those kind of different financiers together. And for example, in our market, which is part of the event in October, we have about, I'd say, I can't remember how many, probably about 150 to 200 people who are somehow involved in producing or financing or commissioning work, and they come from right across those industries. And we spend a lot of time, we have a think tank on our last day where we put financiers together to sort of discuss ways that you can build new models of financing that bring in some of the concepts we've talked about audience engagement, about how you can, there's no financing to do that kind of research or prototyping. It's very difficult, very few funds where you can do that. Super important. But convincing film funds that they should be doing this is very, very difficult. So we're working on that always. We've been doing it because we think it's a very important aspect of working in technology, is getting financiers to talk together and investors.
Absolutely.
But it's happening. It's just very small amounts of money.
Yeah, and it's kind of emerging now. There's no rules written yet. You don't quite know, and every case is first case.
And as a producer, you have to be way more entrepreneurial than before, and you often have to present your idea in a completely different way to a different type of investor, where you think very much what their goals are. I mean, it's what you always have to do when you're selling something, but it's even more. Is think what are they really interested in?
And you do that too, Stephan. No, you talk about crowdfunding in your course?
Yes, I totally agree. We have the same opinion of what you said. It's totally true. And we'll do a focus about crowdfunding. We have several companies in France now. Kickstarter opened an office a few months ago, and we have a guy who is going to explain how to have some money with crowdfunding. So also very, I would say, some tricks and how it's possible to organize his community management and to find some money. For example, on several crowdfunding platforms now, you have the possibility to help a director or producer to finish his movie for the post house. So it's a new way also to have some funds. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And at FLab?
We look at it as that you need a business plan, like I said before by Liz, is that you have to be more entrepreneurial. So our starting point is that everybody should indeed, feel like some kind of startup, feel entrepreneurial, and really need a business plan, and need that business plan to go to the financier. If it is a foundation, if it is a fund, if it's a corporate or whatever, a CSR, whatsoever, but that's what you need, because you need to show what your impact can be, and that can you do via your business plan. So that's for us also very important to be creative with that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And to round it all up, it's that we also have, we will be concentrating on that more in the next session, but there's new ways of interacting with the audience. We know more about them. We can develop two-way relationship with the audience. It's very different to the situation quite a few years ago, when nameless punter would leave some cash at the box office. It's not the world of today. So what can you offer to your trainees in that aspect?
About growing audiences.
Yeah.
We start right at the beginning. Is like, when you develop your idea, it's either this idea of testing, and you use that feedback to do that. And that can mean, there are many different ways you can do that, and many different tools and services that are available to do that. So we help obviously identify that when we're talking to the projects. It very much depends on your project. Mm-hmm. And you have to be totally project focused. You can't be generic about any of this. So that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to, help build a strategy for you to engage an audience, starting to grow the idea in the best place, how you can capture that audience, how you can, ideas for managing a community, and where you go next. Yeah. So that's really, and it can be, and also we have projects at a very late stage that come to our lab. We can take people at any stage really whatsoever who have, created something that they want to find a way of building something else to, they may be finished in post-production with their film, but they want to do something that helps make sure their film doesn't, that gets to a cinema even in the first place. So, yeah.
I think it's a big shift. When you were saying that scenario of the vacuum before, that we know that there's an exciting project and it's for someone, but we don't quite, we're kind of cross our fingers that it will reach them. That was okay before, because we couldn't ask, we couldn't interact with the audience. Now we can, and in the other part of the media program, we also ask the producers, who are you doing this for? You have to, from the earliest stages of development of the project, you have to be doing it for someone. And how are you going to reach them? How are you going to find them? Are you doing the right type of project for the right kind of crowd? At Screen for All, how do you approach that, working with audiences?
Yes, the same way, with some exercise, and to be practical also. The idea is you have to build your own social media network, and because it will be helpful after that if you have a project. Uh-huh. And we try also to have some courses about that. Yeah.
Okay.
Same with the FLab, and that's what I said completely in the beginning, that for us the audience, the user, is very important, and then from the first moment onwards that's something that we focus on in our exercises. So yeah, absolutely can only agree and say that's also something, one of the core things I reckon of what we do. Yeah.